Ask about Illuminati, says the chart in the upbeat ducks. Is it Disney mind control? Is this MK Ultra Deluxe? Occult Disney, go wish upon a star. Occult Disney, to no wrong to chat far. Occult Disney, Media Land, Pinocchio. Occult Disney, as above, so below. Pinocchio seeks fun on Pleasure Island, where traffickers need just falling minds. Captain Hook, a lost boy in Neverland, saving kids from Peter Pan's designs. Nemo feels to survive the Barracuda, and that nobody means no one. Snow White never took another breath. Bird Prince, the angel of death has come. Occult Disney, we go from real to real. Occult Disney, Bohemian Grove and no more feel. Occult Disney, ask about Illuminati. Occult Disney, we teach occult to everybody. Occult Disney, we wish upon a star. Occult Disney, you know not to travel far. Oh, Occult Disney, a new brand Pinocchio. Yeah, yeah, Occult Disney, it's a bomb so the glow. Occult Disney, please enjoy the show.
This show is not endorsed by nor affiliated with the Walt Disney Company. All uses of Disney in the name and all properties are for parody uses and educational only.
There we go. Getting legal. I like it. Okay. It's the occult non-affiliated
I'm a lawyer now.
Disney.
I don't know if you know that, but I Googled some stuff and now I'm a lawyer. That's how it works.
How'd you pass the bar? Google.
Well, and apparently I found out my social security number is actually a bank account for some kind of Illuminati, and I can just like take deposits directly out. I don't know if you've heard that before. I don't know if they have that in Japan, but in the US, when you're assigned a social security number, apparently some people say there's like a magical bank account out there.
I have a magical bank account. No, not really. Anyway, yes, where are we? This is Matt here. You're the Paranoid American. Hi. Just getting those intros out of the way.
Yeah,
I'll be extra addle-brained today. I came in right as we started, and in Nagano, Japan, it's currently like, let's do this in American temperature. It's like 15 degrees, so I only just turned my heater on, so it's kind of exciting. I'm a live wire of ice right now.
This is also a decision that you made at some point in your life.
It was the decision to run an errand before the podcast, yes. Let's get into today's. It's Pocahontas, which we usually talk about how we first came across the movie. I started it. I was like not sure if I had seen it before. After about 15 minutes, I was like, I think I've seen it once, but it was a high school date to the movie theater, so maybe I didn't really see it so much.
Was this a big movie for high school dating?
I went to like 1 or 2 movies every weekend, so it happens.
You just ran the gamut at some point. And I think I had a similar experience where I don't think I've ever seen this movie and paid attention to it. I'm sure it's been in the background more than a few times, but it was like, someone else was watching it, or it was keeping like the kids entertained.
I mean, there's was it the Colors of the Wind song? When my daughter is 2 or 3, Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys, put out his cover album of Disney tunes. So, I like the Beach Boys. She was 3. I was like, oh, I'll try this. I was pretty familiar with the Beach Boys devised version of that song, but otherwise, yeah, most was relatively new to me.
I like the connection here because I would say that Brian Wilson is probably a good analog to Pocahontas in a few different ways.
Oh, okay. I'm absolutely curious about that. Please go on.
Well, I mean, for his natural talents, right? and was essentially kind of turned, I don't know what words to use because I am putting this on YouTube too, but turned over to some sort of a servitude sort of arrangement where he would do the work and the money would come in and he wouldn't get necessarily a lot of the money, yet he was out there entertaining the masses and making other people rich off of him. And Pocahontas has a very similar story where at some point in her life she almost turned into like a circus sideshow act. It was like, look at what the the civilized white man can do with even the greatest savage. Look, she's almost dignified. She almost looks like a real person, and
She
that
lives in
kind of
London. How's
became
that
her.
possible? I did take the tact yesterday of we're doing a wiki dive on the history. I mean, wiki, you can always take a grain of salt or put one in, right? So,
Well, I start with Wiki, and then I go to Snopes if I want like the real hard-hitting info, and then that's pretty much where I stop. Wiki,
yeah,
Snopes.
I just wanted to come into Pocahontas like with the, general knowledge. I mean, I've read the history before. It's just it's been a while, so I thought I'd hit that up again. I guess in the past 10 years, I've been more fascinated by what they mentioned in here, the Cortez and Pizarro stuff. I know Graham Hancock wrote those War God books about Cortez a few years ago, and I enjoyed those quite well. So that's more recently on my mind.
And honestly, there's some angles there that I didn't necessarily get into with Pocahontas because that's sort of like the B plot, maybe even the C plot, like the whole gold thing, kind of like it's the coolest aspect of what's happening in the movie, but it gets the least attention outside of being this driving plot for why the horrible colonists are there. But like the real story of when those like the original like Hispaniola style Spain, like Spanish travelers got there to start establishing like the tobacco colonies. That was also when they kind of came across all of these like South American and Middle American, Central American sort of like practices that lined up with Moloch and Baal and all of these old sympathetic magic practices that they had thought were stomped out of existence for close to 1,000 years at that point, aside from like the highest of elite society. And then they find, oh my God, these guys are doing the exact same thing that we heard that the ancients used to do, and they only had two options, and it was either there was some sort of original contact where someone had come to the Americas, the Mesoamericas, and spread that, or the option that they went towards is that the devil did it. The devil came here and he gave them the same practices just to trick us and make us think that there was a connection here, or that the devil is so persistent that his practices and his rituals just pop up the same way in all over the place. I think that's the most fascinating aspect of this.
And there's just the pure greed of, well, if the Spanish have all that gold down there, I'm sure we'll be fine a little farther north, which was incorrect. I'm from Georgia. We have a bunch of red clay. There's no gold in there.
It's an interesting concept to just like always be looking for gold everywhere you go, especially since I guess they make a good point here is that like the corn was kind of the gold. I thought that was probably the most deep and meaningful symbol in the whole movie, and it's definitely surface level. It's not like you have to go and get a PhD to see it because she literally says like, "Oh, you mean this gold," and offers the corn up. But I don't know. I thought that was a good metaphor.
I know the corn, at least in Delmarva, is quite good. It's good here too. I've been blessed with living in places with good corn. Well, I never lived in Delaware, but my family's there, so I visited a lot. And that is golden corn for sure. But you probably
I'm a
can't
corn
sell it
snob.
at the. Oh yeah, Delaware will do it for you. And Nagano here. Oh my God, we got neighbors at there's a farmhouse, family farmhouse, and the neighbors will pass the corn along, and I guess we hand them some potatoes. They're still bartering up there, more or less. So,
How long has corn been in Japan?
oh, geez, I would guess probably the 1870s because I'm going to think, Meiji after America had butted their way in. Although they could have had it earlier because the Portuguese hung around like about the time of Pocahontas, so maybe they had it longer. I don't know. It's kind of weird to think about, when foods that you associate with different cultures actually started doing it. I was just reading yesterday, like Vietnamese pho soup is only from like the 1930s. Sushi, as you know, it's only like 100 years old because you need like proper refrigeration techniques and such.
delivery. I mean, I get microwave sushi most of the time, so you don't have to worry about it being fresh.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I live in the mountains, so people here are like, oh, we don't really get great sushi, but compared to most places in America, even on the sea, it's probably better.
Now, my sushi come like you add water and you put it in the microwave for like 45 minutes and it fluffs up and then you freeze it so that it feels cold.
Have we ever talked about the truly whack local foods here, which I have eaten.
This will be like the 5th time that you mentioned you've eaten whale sperm, but go ahead.
No, these are local foods. This is different.
Local whale sperm, sorry, not the heck.
No, because this is the mountains. We don't have the sea. So there's hachinoko, which is a bee larva. You can eat that. It's a little bitter. It doesn't taste good, I would say. And then inago, which is soy-covered locust, which actually doesn't taste bad, but when you have like bug legs in your teeth and they're crunchy, and yeah, I guess we're all gonna have to get used to them in 20 years. But
I mean, I was making an argument the other day that could increase human mobility again, because right now, like the thing that prevents people from moving and being where they want to be is that you don't know if you'll find a job when you get there, and if you don't have a job, you don't have any food to eat, and then you basically starve. That's like the ultimate, I guess, extreme scenario playing out. But if we just all normalize eating bugs and make bugs plentiful and start coming up with like ingenious ways to make bugs taste really good, imagine if all of a sudden like having a food source was no longer even a consideration where you were going to go. You always knew that wherever you were going to be at, you could find bugs to eat, and that it was a normal thing and that wouldn't gross you out because we've been doing it forever.
Well, then we'd be complaining about the soy cartels because everyone would be carrying around like a bottle of soy sauce in their pocket to make the bugs taste better.
I'm okay with that on all new like Spice Wars.
Yeah, the Spice Wars. Okay, I like that. But I don't know. I mean,
that's how Star Wars starts, right? Maybe it's because they all just wanted to season their bugs properly, and Dune too, right?
Well, Dune first, I was going to say.
I know. All the geeks out there were like, "What about Dune?" So I had to say that at the end.
Yeah. Does Star Wars have spice?
Well, he was a smuggler. They were basically smugglers, and I mean, I assume that what they were smuggling was spice.
Oh,
they're not explicit about it, but they're smugglers.
Okay. I assumed Han Solo is trafficking people. So,
I mean that too, but why? I mean, you think the cartels are just like, oh no, we don't do the drug trafficking. We only do the people trafficking, or vice versa. I think it's like if you've established the logistics like Amazon, like you're going to sell everything, not just books.
That's why Chewbacca's there. He's the enforcer. Oh God, I just made just Star Wars too much dark. It's already kind of dark, but yeah, it's got a dark side. I mean, they say it directly in the movie. So anyway, back to Pocahontas. Yeah, it's one of those weird things where they thought this was going to be their next jewel in the crown. I think we talked a little bit about during the Lion King, where Lion King was mostly B team because all the A team, Mr. T, Face, and Baracus, they wanted to do this one. This was going to be the big follow up with the sweeping Broadway songs, which it kind of has. But I guess that's my first question. Do these songs rate for you? Because I felt they were a little blander than the past.
Yeah,
few movies.
They don't rate, and I don't agree with the lyrics. So even as they're singing them, I'm just thinking like, that's wrong. No, that's wrong. No, and that's also wrong. So I can't, like, the paint with all the colors of the wind. Like I get what they're trying to say, but there's like a condescending aspect of it. First of all, it's like, can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Like, what are you, like, bragging now? Are you trying to hold this above me that you know how to do some abstract thing that makes no sense? And then I also imagine, let's say you're John Smith, right? You fully integrate, they welcome you, at least in the context of this movie, and you learn how to paint with all the colors of the wind, right? Or let's just say that you're a badass and you already knew how. So let's say she goes through the whole song and dance, and the whole point is that, like, you shouldn't have any right to this land. You shouldn't be colonizing. You shouldn't be knocking down trees because you don't know how nature really works because you can't paint with all the colors of the wind. But what if someone just showed up and she does the whole song and they're like, actually, I do know how to paint with the colors of the wind, and we're still going to take over your tribe. Like, it defeats the entire song, the whole point. It's such a weak point to make of like, well, do you have this secret knowledge? Because someone could be like, actually, yes, I do. have secret knowledge, and I also have guns, and I think the guns versus the secret knowledge, like it's not a fair fight.
Well, I'll reference again that there's Graham Hancock books are a good read because they kind of get into that whole dynamic. I mean, it's historical fiction, whatever, but I liked them enough. I gifted them to my dad for Christmas a few years ago, so I guess that's my recommendation. Although another thing that this movie doesn't touch on, I mean, I guess we're going to be talking quite a bit about things that are in the quote unquote historical record that don't match here, but there is the idea that once these guys landed, they were basically in like a apocalypse zone. Like 80% of the native population already been wiped out by disease by this point. So they're not entering like a stable society. They're entering Mad Max land.
Yeah, and I guess in the movie, it's like they basically find the Garden of Eden untouched by these horrible colonizers, but there is one reference, because so often I think that we like romanticize and like almost like make it infantile with the level of Native Americans. Like they were all just going around and sharing peace pipes and sitting in circles and like sharing plants with each other, but like they had intertribal wars and territorial disputes and forced indentured servitude, and every bad thing that was happening in every other part of the planet was also happening here. And outside of one little line where I think one of the Indians is basically saying, and I'm allowed to say Indian because they say in the Disney movie, this is what they call these the copper skins. That's what they call them that too. So the copper skins, but he mentions that like, oh, we're gonna, we'll defeat them all just like we defeated this other tribe. So there's that one allusion to, hey, like we're actually also a warlike tribe in some contexts.
Yeah, I guess my context is growing up in Georgia, and I was a history dork, so I wanted to learn about the people who used to live there. So what do we have? North Georgia, you got the Creeks and the Cherokees, and then in the more distant past, there's the Etowah, where you can visit a few mounds. I mean, they're nothing like the ones you can find in Ohio or whatever, but it's fun. It's an interesting place to visit. Are you very familiar with the Cherokee Nation stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia's not too far away from Florida, although, and when you start looking at the native tribes of Florida, it's nuts. There's like 50 of them, and you can just like walk 2 blocks and you're in a different tribe again. Like every 2 blocks you walk around here.
Okay, they kept it a little simpler in Georgia. I mean, I'm sure there was plenty of like, splinters and weird lines, because again, they didn't necessarily have borders, but just for a even more screwed up situation is the Cherokee Nation situation, where they're like, okay, the Europeans are here, we will try to be like them, we're going to make our own little Congress, and we'll have a capital, and now we're building like proper houses to which
it's smart. I mean, that's how you play Civ, right? You come in contact with another nation, you inherit all their technology tree, and you start putting it to work, and if you don't, you lose the game pretty quick.
Well, they lost it anyway because they all got booted out of those nice houses and Congress buildings, and it's super small town stuff. I've been up there, but it was clearly made in the tradition of, okay, we're going to try and play your game, and they got promptly death marched out to Oklahoma instead. So,
hey, shout out to Oklahoma. It's very nice this time of year. So, who really won in that equation? I think they might have made out.
Yeah. If you got like 8 parkas to wear, sure. As I sit in a cold room, it's warming up. My heater's on, so I'm maybe talking less manically as we go. One more thing. Sorry, we got on a tangent, but I was just going to throw out on the musical end. Like I said, none of the songs really stick, and yeah, the lyrics. A few lyrics, I was like, wow, you could really do this in '95. Okay, that's cool.
Like what? What was one of the lyrics?
I guess I just felt like in the '90s, even like throwing engine in the lyrics seemed a little weird,
Yeah, but I think they were purposefully doing, like, they were doing it in a way to say, like, look at how ignorant like these colonizers are, that they're saying these things. But it was before a time when just saying it, just to say like, hey, these people that we're criticizing said this word. Now you saying someone else saying the thing is also offensive. So like the rules are different in that way, I think, but I don't think it was flippantly done, and it wasn't done out of like being ignorant. and not knowing about it. I think they intentionally use these words to kind of like drive in how I guess flawed the characters are.
Yeah, it really make you, like not view Radcliffe as a okay guy in part. But I was going to say there were a few segments, especially when Pocahontas and John Smith first meet, where I did notice the score was really good. Like
10 and 24, by the way, in case anyone's doing the math. In historical ages, Pocahontas, when this movie takes place, is 10 years old, and John Smith is 24 years old.
Oh, right. That's one bit of historical accuracy, which is probably best they changed around a bit.
Although, from what I understand, they didn't actually like meet up and like shag in real life.
No, she hooked up with the tobacco baron.
Right, Rolf.
Rolf, yes, thank you. Who doesn't appear in this movie at all. And apparently, she was actually married to Kocoum beforehand.
Yeah, so the guy is almost like the guy she doesn't want to marry. Like she wants like this white pureblood, right? She doesn't want the native in her tribe that she's been arranged to marry.
That strapping man.
She wants this exotic, Disney prince. But in real life, no, she just goes with the traditional marriage and moves off to her little, her another village with the person that she marries that's in another tribe. And then they come and they kidnap her and they, turn her into like an Elizabethan, I guess, like savage turned civilized.
I did see some accounts, though, that a lot of people in London at the time actually referred to as being the Virginian, which I don't know if that's derogatory in, 1616 or not, but just like, someone from Virginia rather than the savage. I mean, I'm sure in some quarters, it depends on who you're talking to, but there was a range of ways people would view her, always as an outsider. I mean, and again, in Elizabethan or just past Elizabethan England, she's going to stick out like a sore thumb. But but anyway, just to get to the point, I was going to say the music was really good in those parts. It made me think of Fantasia a little bit, kind of Debussy stuff. There were other parts where the score did, try and like add in the like stereotype sounding like Indian music, which that wasn't so great. But there were a couple modes of the score that like stuck out to me in this one. So just while we're slamming the music as being lesser, the score was better.
And there was also, I could see a very distinct amount of polish in this one and formula. And like there's a couple in particular, but the very cameo where they show Pocahontas for the first time, it's like they've already kind of done some of the credits. Like the movie kind of already started, it kind of already got established. And then someone calls out her name and they're like, Pocahontas. And the camera does this like fast, like sweeping motion, and it comes up on her. And then like right as the movie like really officially starts, she's like standing on a ledge and she like turns and she looks over her shoulder right at the camera and it zooms in and it just feels like, and that's the picture that's going to go on to the lunch boxes and the t-shirts and the Happy Meals and everything. And it did. But it just felt, it was like a flash splash page, but it felt like it was so like meticulously planned out to do that thing. And I think this maybe plays into the Lion King versus Pocahontas, which we've seen this dynamic a few times where Disney thinks they've got an A team or an A movie and a B movie. And sometimes the B movie's like their triple, hitter, versus the A movie ends up being like, okay, yeah, it wasn't bad, but it didn't necessarily kill the box office.
It is interesting just with naming, because it's Pocahontas, the tribe's calling her, which apparently I'm looking here was a childhood nickname, basically meaning playful one. But like what's in a name is interesting because her real name, it seems, was Matau. It's spelled Matoax. So I'm not quite sure how you say that, but like that would be her actual name. And then once she went to England, her name was changed to Rebecca. So Pocahontas is kind of a fleeting nickname. It's kind of interesting. I mean, if you're still known 400, 500 years in the future under a different name, is that cool with
maybe
you?
but I think Matau, it stood for like born between two rivers. So I mean at that point it's very factual. It's like instead of you having your name Matt, it's just like born between two streets or something. And then after your personality develops, then you get a nickname that reflects that. I kind of like that better. It probably makes tracing people's genealogy horrible, but when you don't have a written record like Native Americans, I guess it doesn't matter, right? When you
Although
don't have a written record of anything.
sorry, I'm getting a little deeper here, just like, well, looking at names. Maybe she got up to 50 names like a Sumerian god, but there's also born Amunute. So we have yet another name. So maybe there's a kidnapping name, a birth name, a kidnapping name, or a getting married in another village name, and then a kidnapping name. So,
maybe the burn one was the born between two rivers one, but whatever. Yeah, she's like a Wu Tang clan member at this point. She's got like 4 different names.
Yeah, 20 years old and 4 different names is some kind of accomplishment, I guess.
I guess. I mean, it doesn't seem like that hard of a flex. Anyone can have 4 names. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. It's when you get up to 50. You got to have 50 to be a god. So I always like that rule. I think that there should be more part of the popular culture. I guess we're a little bit pressed for time today. So do you want to? I'm just kind of like riffing on the general inaccuracy / changes, but do you want to delve a little deeper?
Well, I just want to get right into Grandmother Willow, I guess, and figure out what's John Smith tripping, because I feel like he was given something as they descend into that little platform where Grandmother Willow's at, and then all of a sudden he can start talking to the tree because she's like, "Listen, can you hear?" And he's like, "I don't think so." And she's like, "Go, yeah, just listen." And then all of a sudden the tree comes back to life and starts talking to him. And I feel like they probably left out the part where he gets some peyote or whatever it is that they give him, but that's definitely happening in there.
Yeah, I can't quite find my note on it, but I know I wrote something about the mushies in there. So I don't know what grows in Virginia. So that's thinking about, was it mycology? Like it's what you want is probably not far away, but it looks like the thing that'll kill you. So you really have to know what you're doing.
Yeah, mycology, the study of mushrooms. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it would have been a mushroom, if it could have, because even if it wasn't from the desert, right? Even if they don't have peyote cactus there was a trade of peyote buttons that predates any kind of colonization. Like when we showed up, that was this like well-established sort of trade that had already existed and predated anyone else from being around. And in fact, we kind of left that in place for the longest time until I think the early 1900s or the late 1800s, and they started clamping down on it. And they were like, okay, now it's illegal if you get caught with these little peyote buttons and this mescaline.
I would imagine that at this time, I mean, the trade would probably be going on, but probably quite a bit broken down, But anyway, my first thought was Virginian woods seemed like they'd have some mushrooms that would do the trick. And yeah, I totally got that vibe when, especially when John Smith meets Grandmother Willow. So have you made friends with any trees?
I mean, they're cool, but they're just not great at conversation, so not so much. Like I got no beef with trees, but I don't have any really close friends that are trees.
Okay. I know a few shrine trees. Japan, you can hang around a shrine or a temple and that's fine. And, there's always a massive, very old tree. So that's something here that has sort of the Grandmother Willow vibe.
It sounds like they've got high body counts though.
Was that?
So like a shrine tree would have a high body count. Like everyone's going to that tree and touching it and talking to it.
It's a real big tree though. So there's lots of places you can get there. No, the nice thing is you go and it's a nice quiet place. I do remember going back to America after living in Japan a while and kind of being bummed out that we didn't have like shrines and temples around. You can't just stumble, and you probably don't want to just stumble into a church. So, and it's not the same. Again, I guess it's a more natural thing. I guess Japan sort of did the Cherokee Nation thing like a little bit more successfully. But it helps that Japan is surrounded by water, where the Cherokee Nation was like on land that America wanted without any impediments.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert on Japanese history and American history, especially Native American history. But Native American history was far more splintered with way more different tribes and cultures and interwar that had been going. Like there was Hatfields and McCoy style adversaries happening in the nations way before, again, the Hatfield McCoy existed, because that's kind of what people do. And I feel like just the amount of diversity and the large spread that it kind of could go across, maybe it, like, Japan's would pale in comparison, right? Because we're talking about like your closet versus a super Walmart.
Basically, that sounds accurate. We do have the Ainu, which now live in like the northern part of Hokkaido, which is a previous people in northern Japan. So they were kind of pushed up, and their culture is distinctly different. I visited Hokkaido a few years ago, and you could see the art, their script, and it's like not Japanese at all. It's completely different. And
Now that you're saying that, though, I'm kind of seeing this analogy between like The Last Samurai and Pocahontas in a way, where it's like, here's a portrayal of the last big stand, or maybe leading up to this last big stand of this, like, I guess, quote unquote, noble peoples that just have inferior tech, and they're about to get mowed the F down. Like, they've got absolutely, like, even in this in Pocahontas, when they've got the musical going, and it's like the colonizers have got, the Virginians have got like the guns and the cannons, and they're like, we're going off to war. And then it shows the Indians, they've got like the spikes, they've got like arrowheads on sticks, and it's just like, this is not going to go well for one of you guys. Like, I know I've got, like, hindsight is 2020, but I feel like you're about to watch like a very horrendous, what was the Holy Mountain, when like you're like, you see the frogs and the iguanas, and you're just like, this is not going to go well for one of you guys. And actually, honestly, that might even be the same time period we're talking about. That scene in Holy Mountain with the conquistadors is, I don't know, I want to say it's like within 100 years.
Yeah, I guess the other one that gets thrown out a lot, with Pocahontas being the earlier one, I guess people like to lay a bunch of movies on Avatar, but this is one of the ones that they're like, oh, Avatar was kind of riffing off Pocahontas. And what's the other one?
I'm all
Fern
Ferngully on
Gullies.
this one. Yeah, I'm
Okay, you're
Ferngully
on
till I
Team Fern
die.
Gully. Okay, that's cool. They got more of the creatures and stuff. But I definitely got a bit of. I see where they're coming from, having watched Pocahontas last night. I'd say it's more like that's one of the archetypes sort of things more than anything else. But
and also, I wanted to make a very specific note that the movie Pocahontas clearly does not take the same approach as The Secret, where when the colonizers show up in the big boats, like, no one can see them. What's happening here? Because I don't know if you're familiar with this theory, and the Secret popularized it, but it's that if something happens in your life that is so outside of the norm that some people can't even perceive it, like their brain doesn't understand how to put the things together. I think it's complete BS because when an object blocks the sun from your view and prevents light from passing through it, I feel like everyone would notice at the very least, like, oh, shadows happening. Light is no longer passing through where light normally passes through. You might not realize it's a boat, but you'll be like, thing in way of sun. I don't know, but
I actually like that scene because, yeah, I've heard that before. Like, I see people standing on the beach and seeing the boats coming, and like, of course you could tell it's a boat. But I did like how, okay, I could see like for a minute you're working it out, having just seen the sails. That would definitely be confusing for a few minutes. Once once it comes closer, you can at least work out like this is a boat. I mean,
what do you think is a more exciting product launch? Was it the Native Americans seeing the boats for the first time, or was it Steve Jobs announcing the iPhone?
I like the Danny Boyle movie. Okay, I guess so. Can I choose that movie? Actually, I don't love it, but it's fine.
In the near future, we can combine the two.
Yeah. Apple sails, solar sails, like in Tron. Yeah, that'd be cool. I should be producing things for Apple now. Yeah. I mean, what would I like to see with my own eyes? I'd like to see sails for the first time and not know what they are for a few minutes.
But like, at what point do you start seeing them? And again, I think it's all BS. I think you see it right away. You just don't know what it is. Full stop.
One of my paths home, there's like a little stone shrine on a corner, and every time I think someone's standing there, I should know it's there. I know it's coming, but every time it just looks like a person. And then a few steps farther, and it's clearly a piece of stone. So it fools me for at least a split second every time.
Well, you've programmed yourself into it now too.
Yeah, maybe I'd be disappointed if I just was like, hey, there's a bit of stone. I don't know. Sorry, we got a very tangenty, but I don't know if you got to everything you wanted to say about Grandmother Willow there, unless it was just the mushies.
Yeah, I mean the mushies and just again this concept of the Native Americans being closer to Mother Earth and therefore more noble and more wise and everything. And I understand it, and I don't argue against living in complete, cohesion with nature. But devil's advocate, I really like central air. Like I like it a lot. Like more than just a lot. Central air, I feel like should almost be on a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Especially living in Florida. And I don't know. Every time that someone starts romanticizing, like, oh, we just live in teepees and canoes and we're like one with nature, like sometimes nature really sucks. And like even having a house that's more or less protected from the elements, even then the elements still really suck. And I don't know. I don't know if I would cut. Maybe I just wouldn't cut it back in the day. But I'm just trying to imagine myself living in a time where I'm just out in the woods and just like every time you need water, you have to go and walk somewhere to get the water. And like every time you gotta do anything, you have to go to the place where that thing is done. And like there's not a centralized anything. Like at the best, you might have it centralized to your town, like your village. But now we're on a point where like people have a fridge in the room that they're in, right? Like they've centralized it so much to where like you don't even have to leave your room to get everything you need. And if you don't have a fridge in your room, you've got one in your house. You don't have to leave your house to do it. And if you don't have one in your house, you probably do. You've probably got a gas station on your block, right? So like every micro and macrocosm in current civilization, like you always got a Mountain Dew within arm's reach, essentially. But as a Native American, like you'd have to, I don't know, you'd have to go all the way to the river to get the Mountain Dew.
I mean, these Europeans are pretty close to that as well. I mean, they're, have
I would
quite a
say
bit.
modern days Europeans are savages.
Modern to what now or Pocahontas?
Well, not starting then, but still continuing. I really do think if there's a litmus test, it starts around centralized there. Have you normalized centralized there? And I'm including California in this too. I think a lot of people in California are complete savages.
Hot takes, but no, that's cool. Where was my train of thought there? Savages. Oh yeah. Just living in this at this time would be rough, and I mean, kings are having very cold, gnarly like times to the toilet in winter. You have a much more royal experience using the restroom in winter than a king in Elizabethan England.
Well, and someone made this great point the other day, and I love this, and it's that like even someone living in pretty much abject poverty today in almost any country in the world, let's just say America, because it's the greatest poorest country in the world. But even like in abject poverty in America right now, you probably have a more comfortable life than like a king in the 1400s. Because that king, like, even if they had people waiting on them and they still had to put on, 20 pairs of pants, and they still had to like not have any sort of luxuries outside of, like manual servants. So the fact that we've got all these extra modern day luxuries, it's an interesting dichotomy that like just going back 200 years, like you might rather be poor today than be rich 200 years ago.
I do wonder where the upticks were. Like, would the Roman Republic or Empire be an uptick? I mean, there's probably, looking at the Hero of Alexandria thing, there's definitely technologies we weren't familiar with. So
Well, aqueducts is a big one. If you can get fresh water in and bad water out and not have to mess around with it in the interim, that's like a quantum leap forward in being able to create civilizations and focus on more important stuff, like memes.
Right. And I guess that's people's fascination with ancient Egypt, possible before that civilization, before getting, was it whapped with an asteroid? It's been a while since I've been thinking about the 10,800 years thing, but yeah, that, something like that would definitely reset all of us. So, Uh, where do you place Atlantis? What's your location?
I mean, I would guess I would lean towards the Manly Palmer Hall aspect, where like Atlantis was the like America. It's the New World, and it always was.
Okay, I put it. I've always considered the Bimini Road. I guess it was that Bahamas area, and then the Faroe Islands being like strong contenders. I guess also in the America direction, of course. But yeah.
What about Mu and Lemuria? Do you think those are all the same thing, or are those their own individual sort of continents?
I've sort of picked up that would be the more like over here, the Pacific thing is how I've always picked up on the Mu Lemuria thing. So the idea being, like, actually from Japan all the way out to some Polynesian islands would have been a more substantial bit of land. I mean, there's Zealandia, is it? There's a whole bunch of was recently land near New Zealand. So
I like Zoolandia. That's my favorite.
oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, that was good. That was a fun movie. We'll get to that one. Zootopia, excuse me. Zoolandia. That'd be a good name for a movie too, though. My brain
What else? I
shattering
mean,
here.
this one was just a silly note, but the whole scene when Ratcliffe was commanding everyone to dig up and find gold, and they were like chopping down trees and putting up fences. I was just like, I really want to play what's the Microsoft RTS game, the Age of Empires. I was like, I want to play Age of Empires all of a sudden. Like this is my jam. Like I guess if I had to live back then, I would thrive at just cutting down trees and decimating the environment and building forts and stuff. That sounds so cool. Like actual Minecraft.
Have you ever visited the Jamestown recreation?
I've been to a few like colonies. Mostly I went in like Cooperstown and Albany and like a lot of in like New York and upstate area. I haven't done any of the other ones. And like I would love to go to Roanoke, for example. But yeah, and I think I've been to like Charleston, but I haven't done the Virginia area yet.
Well, the Jamestown one, I mean, there's the Williamsburg thing, which is somewhat well known. And then they've rebuilt the Jamestown fort because the original obviously has not been there for some time. But that's kind of fascinating just to see. Probably doesn't look exactly like it would have, but just the rusticness. I mean, it's probably living worse than the tribes were around there at the time. This is also the location where, about the time of Pocahontas, maybe just before, was the whole Disney's America debacle. You've heard of this one?
You have to inform me.
One of Eisner's things was he wanted to build kind of a half-sized amusement park near Williamsburg that would celebrate American history. They would have built another Hall of Presidents. They're going to have like a roller coaster that went through a steel mill or something, but it would have been like basically Pocahontas style history. And what the real shame of it, so it didn't open because Frank Wells dies. Euro Disney's doing crap. Eisner has a heart attack. The people are like, you're building it on the battlefield, which wasn't quite true. They were building it next to the Civil War battlefield, but the locals didn't.
It would have
like
brought
it.
more attention to the real battlefield, guaranteed.
It would have, but they were, and I think now it's just like that land now has strip malls and stuff on anyway, so
Right?
whatever.
Yeah. It's such a silly argument when people do that. I mean, if it's a Walmart, I can understand. If it's freaking Disney World, like let them in, dude. Like they're the masters of the universe. Let them in.
So what we would have gotten is a theme park. Let's say probably like Hollywood studio sized. I guess is maybe what we're thinking of here. With 1995 Pocahontas American history filters. How fun would it be to visit that in 2023?
I'm in, man. I mean, in all seriousness, Disney Pocahontas is a little bit of a baddie, so that would be a cool concept to just run a whole theme park around.
Because I feel like they don't completely sweep this one under the rug or anything, but it's not like their frontline movie anymore. But if you have built a massive, expensive theme park, you can't just like pretend that's not there.
Well, look how long Splash Mountain stuck around, and even up until the very end, and they do the whole zip-diddy doo-dah. And as you would exit, they'd have, I think for a while they had Uncle Remus, but it was like a silhouette of Uncle Remus. It wasn't like his picture. And then over time, they took the silhouette away, and then they got rid of the song, and then they changed it. And then eventually now it's converted into something else, isn't it?
They're turning into is it Tiana from Princess and the Frog? It's going to be a Tiana ride.
I guess whatever. It's
We-
freaking Splash Mountain, dude. It was. What are they gonna do that's gonna be more terrifying than the freaking the big like bush that you fought? I can't remember the name of the stupid
Briar
bird.
Patch.
The Briar Patch. Like, what's gonna be cooler than imagining if I stood up right now, I would actually get impaled here at Disney World, like not in a cartoon world, here in Disney World. If I stand up and I stick my arm up, like I'll probably die or be maimed. Like that always was the coolest part of that whole park, was that it felt like you could get really hurt at Splash Mountain.
Ernest P. Worrell was certainly worried about it. If you've ever seen that special, have you seen that one?
I don't know.
Oh, that's on YouTube. It's Ernest preparing himself for Splash Mountain. It was a TV thing they
like
did when it
like
opened.
Ernest and like yeah.
Yeah. But there's a sequence where it shows him going and it shows him being completely traumatized by the drop, and it's pretty funny, like with flashing lights and all that sort of stuff. We still have
It's
Splash
the best
Mountain in
ride
Japan,
all
by
of
the
the
way.
Disney parks by far.
We still got it in Tokyo Disney, by the way. Except and I think they still sing Zippity Doo-Dah to you, but in Japanese.
To be clear, Uncle Remus and Zippity Doo-Dah is not my favorite part of that ride. It was just an interest, because I remember at the end, like when I was a kid, like who's the silhouette, and realized song in the South a few times, because I think they played it on the Disney Channel like in the 90s. So
They
it wasn't
did.
like it wasn't completely hidden yet. And I remember the crows, and the crows are even in. Anyways, I don't want this to turn into the Splash Mountain episode, but yeah.
No, but yeah, I'm from Atlanta, right? I mean, so one, it was fun to hear like kind of Atlanta lore being done in Japanese, and two, I mean, in the '90s, yeah, you could go into the Atlanta History Center and they'd have a very large section for books and memorabilia and cups and keychains. Not on the Disney version, of course, but on the original books, which, I mean, if you were to compare the two, the books are probably more problematic, but that's the whole Huckleberry Finn argument, I guess, there. So, but yes,
I've heard some hot takes on Huckleberry lately.
I mean, I read it in high school. I got through without too much pain. The only book I just couldn't make it through, and I guessed on the test, was Great Expectations, which was not what I expected. So, yeah, that's when I just tapped out on. Did you have any other points in your notes? I know we're have about 10 minutes, so if you have a zinger for us.
I do like when John Smith is telling her, like, we'll show you how to use your land better. I don't know. I have mixed feelings. I really do have mixed feelings on the difference between just living in perfect harmony with nature versus just completely dominating nature and showing nature like who the hell's boss of this place. And it's a very, I don't know, it's a very like Christian versus I guess the Native Americans don't count as pagan, right? But like it's this very like Christian versus Native approach of like, one was that everything is ours, like all of this is mine, someone made this for me, versus like we're all in this together, and there's a spirit stone, there's a spirit in the wolf, and there's a spirit in the wind. And I don't know, I feel in a very maybe ignorant way, but doesn't that dilute spirit? Like if a rock has a freaking spirit, like what is a spirit at that point? If everything's got a freaking spirit, then what the hell's a spirit anymore? Versus
Well, that is what Japan's enshrining, like when I go to those shrines, it's enshrining that tree, or it's enshrining this particular mountain,
So what about like the curtain that's behind you right now? Does that have a spirit?
If I felt compelled about that spirit and wanted to build a shrine for my curtain, I guess that would be considered acceptable. Probably be a very small shrine. But yeah, I don't know. It'll take quantum physics. There's no actual division between anything and anything else, right? So,
and again, I guess I don't want to harp on it too much, but this line just irritates the hell out of me. Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? And again, I'm just thinking like, no, can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Because
this
that
is a
feels
Ghostbuster
like...
situation. If someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
Right. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
If someone asks you if you can paint with all the colors of the wind, you say yes.
Right. And again, that would just stop that whole song. Like, let's say she goes on the extended version and it goes on for 3 or 4 minutes. And then after she's done, you just go, actually, yeah, I can. All those things
Watch
that you just
me.
said, all those rhetorical questions that you thought you knew the answer to because you were, had all these preconceived notions because you saw this white colonizer come off the boat and start shooting people. You were like, what a heathen. It's like, no, I'm actually well educated, well spoken, and I murder people. But like all of those things can be true. It doesn't, I don't know. It irritates me that she thought she was so much better because she claimed, and she wasn't even claiming she could paint with all the spirits. It was just, again, a rhetorical question that annoyed me. So screw you, Disney Pocahontas.
So good point. Screw you, Disney Pocahontas. I guess how much of a disconnect, and this is more of a question just for you, but does it disconnect for you that none of these characters seem to be even slightly accurate? And we're missing very important characters as well.
This is every Disney movie, though, man. Like I guess the biggest one, and this is new to me. Like I only started learning this as we started doing the show together. But Jungle Book in particular is the one that I can't shake, with the concept of like Disney hires the people and he's telling them, do not watch the original, don't read the book. Like I don't want you to know anything about the source material, because this isn't Jungle Book, this is Disney's Jungle Book. And we're just taking the template. We're just taking we're buying the brand name of another company, we're shelling it, we're firing everybody, we're bringing in new management, we're establishing an entirely new product line and assembly line and everything, but we're going to keep the branding because the branding is what makes all the difference, right? That's essentially what Disney kept doing over and over again. So at this point, it's almost our fault if we don't see that going into a movie, that it's going to be completely inverted and changed and everything.
I guess the difference here is it's historical. Whereas if I take Kipling's book and I feel like warping it in any way I want to, that's an artistic decision in the end. Whereas this one is actually like, here's a historical movie that is completely inaccurate.
Maybe, although how much of the historical record is even accurate? Because if you look into the history of Pocahontas, apparently all of the records that might have had any information about any of the real facts written down, it burnt down mysteriously. So I don't know, man. I don't is Pocahontas even a real person?
Is Shakespeare a real person? No, I just scratched the surface and found 8 conflicting stories here, none of which are the ones that we see in this movie, which, hey, maybe that legitimizes the movie more. But here's a 9th one that we just made up now.
It's interesting. I like how problematic it is, but they do it with a little bit of grace. It's weird how quickly she falls in love with this guy. He doesn't have any really redeeming qualities other than he doesn't kill her the first time he sees her. That's the best redeeming quality that I guess he's got in this situation.
I love him because he didn't kill me. That's a bad way to start a relationship.
And then she English within 30 seconds, and I'm not sure I understand if it's explained. There's a weird segue where it looks like she's speaking in English just so the audience can understand because he doesn't understand her. But then all that's resolved within one conversation, 2 or 3 sentences later. Now all of a sudden they're fluently communicating with each other.
I wrote that this follows Star Trek rules, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, it makes sense. Chit-chat. We don't need to describe the whole process of how languages assimilate and communication evolves. That's not the movie here.
I was reading an article just yesterday where people were apparently having a conversation with humpback whales. Like if we can have a conversation with them, if we ever do, encounter aliens on a mass scale, we know how to do it. So that's kind of interesting.
My final note on this one was, and I'm not an American history major. I got a C, I think. It might have been a D. I passed. I got a diploma and everything. But in the end of this movie, they're gonna go and they're gonna hurt John Smith. They're gonna take a dagger to him. And Pocahontas throws herself on top of him, and she basically stops it. And she stops this whole war between the two factions. And even the chief is this Pocahontas is wise behind her years. She brings understanding and compassion to this situation where all these different people, they're just bringing war and aggression to it. And she stands up and she basically proclaims with her chief, the father, from this day forth, there will be no more killing. And I hadn't have enough time to do much research, but I assume that's how it happened, right? Like after that happened, there wasn't any more fighting, I don't think. They just got like the sniffles from blankets. I don't know the whole story, but I don't think there was any other bloodshed, and they just all lived happily ever after. So
Okay. I guess we do need to shut it down today, but my last thought, just because we haven't said it during the whole podcast, is Mel Gibson is here. Okay, that's all for that.
Was Mel Gibson in this movie?
Yeah, he's voice of John Smith.
I didn't even know that. Oh,
He
this
does
makes
some of
it
the
so much.
too.
Okay, now we have to redo this episode. We'll do a part 2 where we're gonna reinterpret it as Mel Gibson and Tunnel Jews.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he's fine with the natives, but do not ask him about the Jews.
Yeah.
If you want to get on about it a little more, we could do that. But I guess for today, you have a minute before you have another plan. So do you want to plug it out real quick?
Paranoid American, Occult Disney. We're gonna ramp these up. Maybe we'll start ramping them up and getting more knocked out, because Disney sure as hell didn't slow down in the 90s, the 2000s. If anything, they just started throwing gas on the fire. So we're gonna throw gas on the fire. Come check it out, Occult Disney. Go sign up to Matt's Patreon. And yeah, do yourself a shout out.
Podcastrius, just to shout that out. Yeah, that's Podcastrius on Patreon. And now I'll throw out the rovingsagemusic.bandcamp.com, because I have a lot of music there if anyone wants to hear that. Some of it with weird conspiracy-based lyrics. So, okay, out till next time. Next time we're getting to the Toy Story, I believe. So.
Oh, is Toy Story next? Okay,
I believe that is next. So
all right, I'm gonna have to prep
for that.
I feel like I might have like a whole like PhD level like theory dissertation developing over Toy Story. So
yeah, that's a great one for it. So
I've got some work cut ahead. Let's plan for that one to be over an hour for sure. So
radio. Okay.
All right, I'll leave us out on one of my new commercials.
Okay.
All American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
Explore the unique with Paranoid American sticker sheets. Unearth tales of cryptids, cults, and mysteries through each sticker. These won't last long. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
We're all American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all of that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
What the heck are you waiting for? Discover the extraordinary with Paranoid American sticker sheets. From cryptids in the night to cults out of sight, each sticker is a unique find. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.